Good afternoon. What I want to talk today about is a system in North Carolina. We have two retirement plans in North. Whoops, that didn't work. Black. So we're going to look at people that were enrolled in these plans in North Carolina, working for the state or local government, and what happens when they terminate their employment. And so in these public plans, there are some characteristics about these plans that are clearly different than what you might be used to in the private sector. And that is that people contribute to the plans and they have account balances implied for departure at any moment. And so what we've done is we partnered with the state retirement system in North Carolina, was able to access some data, and now we've been looking at what happens when people leave the system. To make sure I hit the right button.
I think it's green for go.
There, I got it. So what are some of the issues that we're trying to tease out of these data? First is, what are the individual characteristics of participants that influence the choice of these terminating workers on whether to take a lump sum distribution or leave their account balance open and therefore be eligible to receive a benefit down the road. When people leave, they also have the opportunity of making some other choices about how they get the money. So you can take a cash settlement where you actually touch the cash. Of course, that has tax implications. Or you can have the money rolled over into some other type of tax-qualified plan. And we have data on both of those. And then we'd like to know a little bit about whether or not financial literacy and financial information can affect those choices. So what happens here is that as you're working for the state of North Carolina, you're accruing credits, or if you're working for one of the local governments that participate in the local government pension plan, you are accumulating credits toward retirement the same way that people do in any private sector defined benefit plan. In North Carolina, the vesting criteria is 5 years. In other states, it's a little bit higher. Some have a little bit lower, but in the public plans are not subject to ERISA, so they set their own standards, and in North Carolina it's 5 years. Almost all public sector pension plans require employee contributions. Virtually no private sector pension plans require employee contributions, so we've got some significant differences here. We're going to look at two different types of workers. We're going to look at those that are vested and those that are not vested. When they leave the system, vested workers can leave their money in and obviously would ultimately receive a retirement benefit if they chose to do that. Non-vested workers can also leave their money in, but they are not currently eligible for a benefit, so we might ask the question about why would they ever do that, and we can point to some reasons why, and we'll actually see that quite a large number of people do leave their money in. So if you are not vested in North Carolina, you are working, have worked for less than 5 years, and you leave, the reward that you get is your contributions back with no interest. You are not eligible to receive a benefit down in the future, but we'll give you your money back, but no interest. Workers that are vested that receive a lump sum are guaranteed their contributions back plus a compounded 4% interest rate. And of course, they can leave their money in, their account balance open, and ultimately would receive a question. So our key research questions that we mentioned before is basically who's going to decide to take a benefit or take a lump sum distribution, and who's going to decide to leave their account balances open. Briefly, as I mentioned, there are two systems here. One is called the Teachers and State Employees Retirement System. This system covers both teachers and state employees, and the other system is the local government employees. So this is municipal workers, county workers, and their administrative units buy into this system. They're basically the same. There's a slight difference in the formula, 1.82 for the state, 1.84 for the local plans. They both have 5-year vesting. They both have a 4-year salary averaging period to calculate benefit. The employee contribution is 6%, and then the state is supposed to put in a sufficient amount of resources to make sure that they can pay benefits in the future. You may not know, but North Carolina is typically one of the top 3 or 4 best funded retirement plans in the country. North Carolina has every year since the plan has been operated until last year put in the annual required contribution. For those of you that are not actuaries, annual required contribution is really not required of anybody. It's just saying, here's what you ought to put in order to move toward full funding in the future. We talk about the normal cost of the plan as the ongoing cost, which is how much additional benefits are being accrued for work that year, and then you try to amortize your remaining unfunded liabilities over a certain period of time, typically 30 years. So in this sector of the pension universe, the annual required contribution is actually calculated after they've already taken money out of my paycheck. So the employee contribution is a given, and then it's how much more does the state need to contribute. We have 3 different ways in which you can qualify for or you're now eligible to start receiving a benefit: 65 with 5 years of service, 60 with 25 years of service, or 30 years without regard to any age. Fairly standard, in fact, for many state plans. However, many states are now reviewing a lot of these options under a substantial amount of financial pressure. As I said, we partnered with the state retirement system for a variety of reasons. They are interested in our research and what we're doing, and so we got data on every person that left the state retirement system between 2000 and 2009. The data set are from administrative records, and so it's the usual sorts of things that you have and the usual sort of things that you don't have. These would include things like age or birth date, gender, salary, and retirement plan, which of the retirement plans they're in. We actually can determine what job the people have within the state in some broad categories. We know whether the person is currently receiving a retirement benefit, that is, had they already achieved one of those criteria for normal retirement. Of course, we have an early retirement plan as well, where you could take a benefit at age 50 with 20 years of service. Of course, that is reduced. So we look at and see, of those people that left, how many took a retirement benefit right away, and how many didn't qualify for an early or a normal retirement benefit by age and service. And so if they were there, did they take a lump sum distribution, or did they take leave their money in the system? All right, so we start out with about 300,000 people. If we take out the people that actually retired, because we're not interested in those people that are retiring, we're really interested in those people that are leaving prior to retirement and trying to choose to either take the lump sum or leave their funds in the system until they qualify. We end up with 215,000 people, still a large number. We then eliminate everybody over 50 because, again, this would be an issue that some of those people would have been eligible to take a benefit. So we're trying to get to people that are actually leaving and facing the choice of a lump sum or leaving their money in, and we end up with 175,000 people there. So just looking at people 18 to 49 in the system, just some means here in terms of the proportion that are taking lump sums. So we see of the people that left that meet our age and service age criteria, counting vested and non-vested, about half are taking a lump sum distribution. Men are a little bit more likely than women to take that lump sum distribution, and then the longer you're there, the less likely you are. That, of course, is also wrapped up in the size of the account balance. Splitting it by vesting, you can see the differences there. Again, some rather similar observations. Men are more likely to take it whether they're vested or not. In the local system, they're more likely to take a lump sum distribution than being in the state. And years of service plays a role there. On the left-hand side, on the non-vested, you have to have less than 5 years, and so we see the 2 categories that we broke in there. On the right-hand side, you see you're vested, so you have to have at least 5 years of service, and you see that more years of service are typically associated with being less likely to take the lump sum. Account balances, again, sort of what you might have expected. The bigger the account balance, the more likely you're to leave it in. Of course, all of this is wrapped up, too, with age and service, and when we're just looking at means here. Another thing is looking over time. One of the things that happened in North Carolina is we improved our record keeping, we improved our computer models in terms of keeping up with the records and what we provide people with online access to their records, an illustration of what their account balances are. That's happening right in the time period of 2006, 2007. And so there seems to be a trend away from taking lump sums in this post-change in period. This post-2006, 2007 period is also associated with just better financial information about what your options are. So we've got these 200-some-odd thousand people. We run the regression of did you take a lump sum payment or leave your account balance open. We did that separately for the vested and non-vested workers. And again, all of these coefficients are highly significant, and so we don't have stars there, just know that they're all significant. And you can see that these are sort of, as you would expect, following the means. Men more likely to take a lump sum in either category. Public sector work, state-level workers less likely to take the lump sum, and then the age effects that we see there. And again, we have the time trend, as you can see. In some cases, the propensity of taking a lump sum, this is all relative to 2000, went up a bit, and then the trend is away from the lump sum toward the following years. So that's the notion of what do you do when do you want to leave your money in so that ultimately you could get a benefit, or do you want to take the lump sum? The other question that everybody has to answer when they're doing that is, do they want the state retirement plan to send them a cash check, or I guess you could get it in a brown paper bag, or do you want to roll it over to a tax-qualified account? And as you can see, the bottom line says 85% take the cash. So what are the key findings here? That over time, more workers are taking the cash, or taking the lump sum. Men are slightly more likely to accept cash, and so on there. We've talked about those. Key findings then are about half the workers are taking the lump sum. And does that strike you as big or small? I guess it depends on your priors. Account balances matter and some other things there. The issue of taking cash over rollover certainly has some particular implications for tax purposes and also for the accumulation of retirement income in the future for these workers. And the 2007 departure date seems to matter here in terms of what kind of information we were providing folks. Of course, a lot of other things were going on. So one of the things I wanted to get to is this puzzle about why are non-vested people, any non-vested people, leaving their money in the system. And so this is an interesting issue. Probably wouldn't happen in the private sector if we had these kinds of plans, but here the notion is the state of North Carolina, obviously, whether you're in the public, the state or the local system, these are big, wide systems with lots of people employed. And so one of the things that happens is that you can come back. So if you leave your account open and you come back to employment, then your prior service years still count. So these gaps in service, so suppose you wanted to stop working for a while and raise a family and you were going to be out a couple of years, if you did the math, you might well believe that leaving your money in is an appropriate decision. And certainly there are a lot of people doing that. So we are in the process now of trying to investigate that in more detail to see if we can identify what kinds of people that are non-vested are making these kinds of decisions. A prior might be that this is a lot of school teachers, but we can look at that because we haven't looked at the actual jobs that people have, but we could, and we're in the process of doing that. Money left in the system doesn't earn any interest, so this really is a zero interest loan that you're giving the state if you choose to do that, and so that's sort of an interesting factor there. One could then say, well, why don't all vested workers leave their money in the system? So one puzzle was, why don't all non-vested workers take their money out? One could also say, why don't all vested workers leave their money in? Because of the way that we calculate what that lump sum distribution is. So the lump sum distribution is also sort of not that very generous because you're getting your contributions plus interest. It makes it sound like a funny term about vesting because you're not vested in the employer contributions. If you leave your money in, you get a benefit that is essentially implied as both the worker and the employer contributions. And so we're doing some further investigation of that. One of the things that we're doing right now actually is we have partnered with the chief actuary of the retirement system, and we're getting the benefit that a person could get if they left their money in, and we're using the implied interest rate that the retirement system does to calculate a present value of the lump sum distribution that way. Then we can compare that lump sum to the lump sum that they're actually offered. And we can see if people are making a decision that is consistent with those two lump sums or not. If I had to bet, we'll find a lot of people are taking a lump sum that's offered that is lower than the lump sum that would come out of this discounting in the future. And so we also are then able to use that information to calculate an implied discount rate that the person must be applying to choose the lump sum that they're offered. And so we're going to do that for all 175,000 people, and we ought to be able to look at the distribution of implied discount rates across all of those folks. So we've got a lot of work to do with this, but at least at this point, I think we've identified some key characteristics of this choice of a lump sum versus leaving your money in. I haven't seen any other work necessarily at this level with these kinds of plans. Certainly there have been other studies of private sector plans basically done, except for the consulting firms, has been looking at survey data. And so we actually have all of the right information to make those choices. Thank you.